Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Sri Tips here, and I was doing a little yard work and seen an opportunity here. These wood fires get real hot, so what we're gonna do is I've got my filters down here. We're gonna burn our filters and do a filter paper video. Now we're just going to take our filter papers, put them up here on this fire, and let them burn. Yeah, I don't see any more smoke or anything coming off of here. So I think we pretty much got all this burned up. Let's go ahead and pull it off the fire now and let it cool down. Here's a shot of all the burned material, filter papers. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to spoon this material into a strainer up here, and we're going to push it through this strainer to create some finely divided particles and go on to the next step. Alrighty, we've got most of the material forced through our screen. It's quite a bit of material in the bottom of this beaker. Now what we'll do is pour this stuff back in, I guess. Well, let's grind this up with the mortar and pestle, see if we can get some of this divided up so we can pass it through our screen. Alright, I pretty much got everything that's going to go pushed through the screen here. And then this material that I have left over, I'm just going to add it to this container, save it. There might be some precious metals, and then one day in the future I'll pick through this when I got nothing to do and see if there's anything of value in here. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll pull up our burner here. I'm going to put our beaker with our material in it. This is what it looks like. It's in a highly finely divided state, powder. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set it up here on the heat. Now we'll add some distilled water and stir it up. Get everything wet in here, make a slurry. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll add a little bit of nitric acid. Not much, just enough to get this started, because I don't know how this is going to react with the nitric acid. There's probably only about 50 milliliters in here. That was more like 100 milliliters. We'll stir this up. And we are getting a bubbling reaction there. I haven't added any heat yet. Now we'll cover this up and let this react. I'll rinse this nitric bottle out with some distilled water. I saved these. These are pretty handy for storing my silver solutions. Let's get all the nitric acid out of there first. I'm going to add a little bit of heat. Medium-low heat. Cover this up and just let it react for a while now. Let's see what's going to happen here. We've only been going for a couple of minutes here. I think it's safe to add a little bit more nitric acid. Not too much. Adding nitric acid is tricky, because if you add too much, what could happen is you get a delayed runaway reaction. So until we know what this is going to do with those nitric additions, I'm just going to keep adding small amounts, stirring it up, and let it react with the amount of acid that I've already added. We've had this on boiling now for about an hour and 20 minutes. What I'm going to do is add a little bit of nitric acid, not much. And what we'll do is see what kind of reaction we got out of this. It's about 30 milliliters. Poured in real slow. Let's see what happens. I don't see a whole lot of reaction there. And what that tells me, with it being this hot, I don't see any fume production, nor bubbling reaction or anything like that from the nitric acid. So what that tells me is pretty much got everything that's gonna dissolve in nitric acid to go into solution. Let's kill the heat on this. And what we'll do is pull this down off the heat now. And now what we'll do is I'm going to add some distilled water to help cool it off and dilute it down a little bit. I've allowed the solution to settle and cool for about an hour. In here I've got one of my specially prepared filter papers that rides up the inside of the Buchner funnel, and this will guarantee that we capture all of the solids in this funnel. And now what we'll do is pour the liquid through the filter and collect the solids. Got all the liquid pulled through now. What I'll do is kind of rinse the solids off here with a little distilled water. Got almost all the water pulled out of there, and if you look down here, the water is running colorless, which means that we've got all of the blue liquid pulled off of there. So now what we'll do is we'll get our funnel out of here. There's our material. What I'll do now is transfer it right back into this beaker. Here we go. Now we're going to hit this brick of solids with some aqua regia. Let's get this thing out of the way. Now what we'll do is add some nitric acid to this to form aqua regia in here. That's about 80 milliliters of nitric acid. I'm going to dump it right on in. If you look down there, you'll see we're getting some reaction right away. So what we'll do now is move this up on the heating pad, give it a stir, and I'm going to add a little bit of heat, low heat. This has been on boiling now for about an hour and a half. I'm going to take it down off the heat. I'm going to let this cool down now. I'm going to do a stannous test. These are pieces of filter paper that I've cut up into strips. And I've got one on the end of a bamboo skewer here so I don't have to stick my hand down in this hot beaker. Get a little bit of the solution on here. Now let's do a stannous test. Oh yeah, we got a nice dark stain there, which tells me that we have precious metals in our solution. While I'm waiting for our solution to cool down here, I've got another beaker with a piece of copper in it. And what I'm going to do is, this is our nitric acid boil, this blue liquid. And it should have a little bit of silver in it. So what we'll do is we're going to add this to the beaker with the copper, and we're going to cement the silver out of this blue liquid. I remember doing this reaction about 12 years ago when I first started refining. A little silver nitrate in a test tube, and I put a piece of copper wire in there, and the silver immediately began to come out of solution onto that piece of copper, and that is when I fell in love with science. What's happening here is, in accordance with the reactivity series of metals, the silver in that blue solution is coming out of solution onto the piece of copper as the copper goes into solution. The silver being less reactive and the copper being more reactive, the two metals are essentially trading places. I've allowed this solution to cool overnight. I've allowed the silver that we precipitated out on copper to remain in here overnight. Let's stir this up a little bit. And let's see if I can get the piece of copper out of here. There it is. And so here's the silver that we recovered out of the nitric acid boil we did at the beginning of the video. Now what we'll do is move the silver jar here out of the way, and we're going to bring up a filter flask. We're going to filter our solution here. If you look, I've got one of my specially prepared fitted filter papers in this Buchner funnel. And we're going to connect this to a vacuum line. Now I'll dampen the filter with a little distilled water. And we'll pour the solution that we've extracted with the Aqua Regia. We're going to capture the solids, which should be just about null and void of any precious metals. And we're going to filter this gold bearing solution now through this filter paper. This is our gold bearing solution down here in the bottom of this flask. And now what I'm going to do is continue to get these solids, into this filter paper so we can draw off the gold bearing solution from these solids. I've got most of the gold bearing solution pulled off of these solids in here now. So what we're going to do is try to rinse the rest of the gold bearing solution off here as we stir this up. It's going to take a while, and what I'm going to try to do is get all this yellow out of these solids. And I'll be able to tell when I've succeeded by looking at the filtrate that's coming out of the bottom of the funnel down there into the flask. When that starts running colorless, I'll know that I'm getting close to have rinsed all of the gold bearing solution off these solids. This is what I'm talking about right here. When that filtrate coming out of the bottom of this funnel starts to run colorless like water, then I can safely conclude that I've rinsed all of the gold bearing solution out of these solids. Here you can see the liquid is still yellow, but it's a pale yellow. So what we're going to do, I believe, is I've got the solids up here, and what I'm going to do is, this is hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid does a better job of rinsing metals off of solids than just plain water. So we're going to put some hydrochloric acid in here now and rinse this with hydrochloric acid. I've got as much of the gold off of here as I can from our solids, and you see I've added multiple hydrochloric acid doses, and we're venturing into an area of diminishing returns now. So I'm going to call it, and we're going to proceed from here. So now what I'll do is take our funnel off of here. Still got gold left in it. I've got as much extracted as I possibly can. And now what we'll do is I'm going to put this residue in this container. It's a sealed container. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is going to emit fumes. And here's the inside of our filter. And what we'll do now is proceed from here. Now what I'll do is use some distilled water to rinse my funnel out. Some of the particulate will be rinsed into our filtered solution down in the flask, but that's quite all right. You'll see why here in a minute. As a novice refiner, I used to try to do a second extraction on these solids, and we could boil this for another hour and a half in Aqua Regia and maybe recover another gram, half a gram or 3/4 of a gram, maybe even a gram. But it's just not worth the effort and time. So what we'll do is we'll just set this aside and save it. I've done this before. 95 or more % of the gold from this solid material has been extracted with that first Aqua Regia boil. So now we're going to proceed and process this solution. This is the piece of paper I used to hold the funnel so I didn't get that gold solution all over me. I'm going to put some stannous on here, and you'll see that there's still precious metals in that solution, but there's not very much. It's just not worth going after that little bit of precious metals in that solution. We've got all the precious metals that we're going to get extracted in this solution. Now we're going to pour the recovered solution back through a new filter. Filter it a second time. If you look in the bottom of this flask of our recovered liquid, there's definitely some solids down there. So that's why we're refiltering a second time through a fresh filter. Get as much of this solid material out of here as possible when we have it in this state. I already know there's gold in here, but I'm just gonna get a quick stannous test from the liquid up here. Boom. There it is. Nice dark stain means we have precious metals in solution. I've been vacuuming the solution now through this filter for about 15 minutes. You'll notice it's coming through just drips at a time. So what we're going to do here to speed this up, I've got a vent valve here to vent the vacuum off the system. I'm going to open this up, vent the vacuum off. There's a pressure switch here that when it senses that lower vacuum, it starts the pump for me. Down here I have an isolation valve that takes that vacuum switch out of the circuit. And now we'll shut our vent, and we should pull nearly a full vacuum. And what that will do for us is that will help us pull this solution through that filter much quicker. Here you can see the liquid's being pulled through faster. We've got the vacuum approaching 29 inches of vacuum. And I have a video titled How to Build a Reliable Vacuum System posted on my channel. This pump has been in service since 2011. For almost 11 years. I just keep the oil changed in it, and it keeps on running. The current time is about 10 past 4 p.m. I started filtering this liquid through this filter at 9:42 a.m. and I've had a full vacuum on it for most of the time, and we're just now getting to the end. Why this occurs is who knows what material was in that solution that we're filtering out. It's acting like there may have been some tin in here. Remember, these are filter papers from my gold refining, hundreds of them, and there's no telling what compounds were in those filter papers. So this is normal for this kind of scrap, this kind of material. So we're almost there now. Once we get the rest of this liquid pulled through, we will proceed. I've got most of the liquid pulled through this filter. Now what we're going to do is transfer the liquid to a clean beaker. Get this up out of the way. And we're going to pour our gold-bearing solution down here into this beaker. And we're going to verify we've got gold in solution one more time here. Stannous chloride testing solution. Alright, you can see we got a dark stain there. That verifies we've got gold in solution. Now we're going to try to precipitate the gold out of our solution with some Stump Out. Stump Out by Bonide is sodium metabisulfite. There we go. You won't be able to see much because this is a real dark solution. We'll only be able to tell when that gold is out of the solution after we test with stannous chloride. It is turning a nice caramel brown color for us. Get down in here with a piece of filter paper. Check it one more time, see if we've got all the gold out of here. Looks like we have. Probably got some platinum group metals left in this solution, but I think we've got the gold to drop. I'm going to add a couple more spoons of SMB here, just for good measure. And we'll stir this up. And I'm going to put a lid on this thing. We're going to let this settle. I'm going to do another quick stannous test before we pour off our waste solution here. It's been allowed to settle for about an hour. And I know I've got all the gold out of here, but now what we'll do is show that we do have some precious metals in this solution. Looks like it's going to be a little bit of palladium possibly, and some platinum. I see some orange there, but that's not enough to try to go after and recover and refine it. So we're just going to add this to the stock pot. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pour this off now. This has been allowed to settle, like I said, for about an hour. And we should have some gold down in the bottom of this beaker. All right, here's our gold down in the bottom of our beaker. Now what we'll do is get our gold down in here in this melt dish. It's a very fine powder. I'm not going to try to re-refine it or anything. We're just going to melt it up into a button and see what kind of yield we're going to get out of this. Here's our gold suspended in this solution. And what we're going to do is we're going to melt this up into a little button and get a yield. Here's our small button of pure gold that we recovered from our filter papers. It's got a little flux on the bottom here. Should be able to get that off with a piece of, there we go. Kind of just chip it off with a pair of pliers. Or we could put this in sulfuric acid and get rid of it that way. Here's our small button of pure gold. Let's see what we got for weight on this thing. 9 grams. 9 grams of probably 99% pure gold. So that's worth probably like what, $450, $500. So it's worth recovering it. It's better than letting the trash waste bucket have it. It's worth keeping those filters and recovering our small button of gold. And this will conclude the filter papers recovery video. I'd like to thank everyone for watching.